Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about one of the forgotten techniques, one of the most overlooked ways to catch summer bass, and that is the tube. Today I'm going to show you how to adapt them and rig them so that you can consistently catch fish when it's hot outside. The vast majority of us fished a tube as kids. That was the bait that I was raised on. I threw a gets it all day, every day for 10 or 15 years. That is what we fished with. And we caught a ton of fish, but somewhere I got away from it. Well, fast forward, and I have rediscovered in the last 10 years or so the deadly effectiveness of a tube. Now, we know a tube is great for smallmouth. We know you can go up north and catch smallmouth on the tube, but that's not what we're talking about today. Well, actually, it is. We're going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about how to take a tube and adapt it everywhere else, because it is equally effective on a ledge on the Tennessee River. It's equally effective on long tapering points in a highland reservoir, and it is equally effective flipped in heavy grass in the deep south. You just need to know how to adapt them. So the tube itself is a very, very simple bait. Okay, if you're not familiar with a tube, they come in a range of sizes. I would say that 3.5 inches standard, although we're going to be all over the board today, but a standard tube is 3.5 inch. It's hollow, so I can squeeze it. It's hollow inside, and then it's got all these cut legs on the end, and you can spread those legs and you can see that it in fact is completely hollow. Then what you do is you take a head and you just slide it in there and pop it out the side, and you're ready to fish. That's the standard rigging for a tube, and that works really well. But what I want to talk about today is the 3 ways that we dial in a tube for summer fishing. Let's start with smallmouth. Let's start with the north, and then we're going to talk central, the middle of the country, highland reservoirs, lowland reservoirs, but not really places with a lot of grass. And then we'll end with how to fish them effectively around grass. We're also talking current, so hang in there for that. But northern guys, everybody up north knows how deadly a tube is. But if you want to dial it in this summer, take it a step further. This is something that we were doing a few weeks back when we were up in Michigan, but it is incredibly effective, and that is to fish that smaller tube. So if you're not fishing a smaller tube this summer, that's something you want to look into. This is the STH tube, but it's the 2.5 inch size. It's a little guy, and I rigged that on a very specific head. This is an inhaler head with a 1/0 heavy wire hook. Now, the heavy wire part might surprise you, but we all know how hard smallmouth pull. Once you get those fish on, you don't want to be afraid that you're going to lose them. So that 1/0 hook is small enough that you can get it in a 2.5 inch tube, and it's small enough that I can set it with my tube rod with 6 or 7 pound line, but it's stout. And I know that a 5 or 6 pound smallmouth is not going to bend that hook out. So once I've got them, I've got them. Now color, that's up to you. If you're on the Great Lakes, that color right there, juvenile Gobi, is deadly, but a lot of those other great colors obviously apply. But again, if you're a northern guy and you're not fishing a smaller tube, both on the Great Lakes and inland and in the rivers, that's something you need to try. I think you'll be surprised how many more bites you get, and more importantly, how much more often, how many different conditions it will work in. They seem to pick that smaller tube up even when they're not in the mood for the bigger tube, and that's a big deal. And the other one is this guy. This is a 3D Gobi tube. See the fins on it? It's got face detail to it. That's another tube that I did extremely well with up north in that clear water, rigged on the same exact head, but with a 2/0 hook. And I would throw that one essentially sight fishing, not bed fishing, but sight fishing fish in the clear water. If I would see them cruising, or you know those ones that get up high in the water column and they suspend and they sun themselves, I would lead those fish, and with that full Gobi profile, those fish would just chase after that thing and mow it down. So two really unique tubes for fishing up north. Now, let's talk about the middle of the country, because that's the vast majority of people. And I think that's the place where this is the most overlooked. So middle of the country, I don't care if we're talking here on Chickamauga, I don't care if we're talking Clear Lake in California, or if we're talking the thousands of reservoirs in between. The tube is completely overlooked. People forget about it. They definitely don't throw it in the summertime. They forget that they even can throw it. You might, if the going gets tough, you might turn to a shaky head. You might turn to a Carolina rig. If it's really bad, you might be turning to a Ned rig. You need to add a tube into that arsenal. Main reason is that other people aren't. The tube is overlooked, which means the fish have not seen it for a while. Typically, I'm throwing either a 3.5 or a 4-inch tube. So this is a big bite. This is an STH. It's the 3.5-inch big bite. And I'm gonna link all these baits in the video description. I'll link the baits, the exact heads, the weights, the hook sizes, all of it, favorite colors. But 3.5-inch big bite, 4-inch STH, very, very similar profiles overall. This one just has a longer skirt. But that 3.5 to 4-inch size, that's your size. And then I fish more of a standard hook in it. I am fishing exposed hooks unless I absolutely can't, okay? Tubes are inexpensive. The heads are relatively inexpensive. So I fish them on an exposed hook. I know I'm going to lose a few, but the hookup ratio with an exposed hook is amazing. If that fish picks it up and that hook is sticking out there, they are going to get that hook. Sometimes when you're Texas rigging or using like a Kale style hook, some of those other designs for tubes, your hookup ratio slips a little bit. And I want to hook those fish. If I get one to eat, I want to get them, obviously. So I will throw that exposed hook, even knowing that, you know, through the course of the day, I might lose a few tubes. But again, this isn't swim bait fishing or hard baits, you know, crankbaits. I'm not losing a ton of money, so I'm willing to take that risk to make sure I hook all of my bites. But again, standard sizes. So this is the standard hook that I've always used for years and years and years. It's got an O'Shaughnessy style bend to it. See that little bit of a roll there? That O'Shaughnessy style hook just has an excellent hookup ratio, and that's what's in that one there. Then the other one that I throw, if I think I'm around big fish, if I think I run the risk, it's a good thing, of sticking a big largemouth, then that inhaler head, the same one I throw in the little 2.5, I throw that same in either a 2/0 or a 3/0. You can see it's just a heavier gauge wire. It's a very, very strong hook. So if I think I'm just fishing for numbers, I'm fishing that O'Shaughnessy style hook every time. If I think I'm fishing for big ones, I'm fishing that inhaler every time, and I'm hitting them hard. Now in a 2/0 and a 3/0, you'll want slightly heavier line to be able to set that inhaler hook consistently. So I'm throwing that on, you know, 8 to 10 pound line as opposed to 6 to 8 pound line. Not a big difference, but just a little bit heavier so that I know I could give them that little bit extra on the hook set. And we'll get into gear and stuff in just a second. Now, one thing to add, the river guys, Tennessee River guys, there's rivers all over the place. A lot of guys that fish current think, hey, that doesn't apply to me. I can't fish that in my current. That's a little finesse bait. That is simply not true. So they make these larger, fatter heads, okay? Now these were designed to take a tube and then make that head bulge and give it sort of that Gobi look. And you'll see that a lot up on the Great Lakes trying to imitate a Gobi. Well, those heads are deadly on these river systems because that's a 3/8, but the one that's in here, that's a 1/2 ounce. You can get bigger than that. You get a 3/4 ounce. So you can take a small 3.5 to 4 inch tube and effectively fish it in 20 or 30 foot in fast current, just like you would a jig or a worm. So you can get out and ledge fish with the tube where no one else is throwing a tube. Show them something completely different and get those fish to go when other people are just running the same baits past them over and over again. Again, it's completely overlooked. You just needed to know how to adapt it so that it would work in your area. And then last but not least is the grass guy. You know, Florida, Texas, the whole South. The tube is effective there too. Boy, I am sweating. It is warm today. The tube is effective there as well. But what you can do is you can take that guy and you can adapt it to your conditions. So you can take a standard size tube, or you can take a bigger flipping tube. Again, I'll link you my favorites, but those big flipping tubes are overlooked, man. Same place that you're going to be throwing a big jig, you know, punching that heavy cover with a jig, flipping that Texas rig. Instead of throwing a creature bait on that Texas rig, pegged Texas rig, throw that tube instead. It's completely different profile, thin in the head, bulbous in the back, and it glides. When these things fall in the water, they just coast because that great big skirt is spread out and it just rides that way. And it's just a different look. We all know how important a different look is in these pressured fisheries. And in the last year or two, there has been an explosion in bass fishing. There are way more anglers now than there were 2 years ago. That's reality. So it's more important than ever to be a little bit different than the next guy. So even that guy punching heavy cover, you can pick up a tube and you know you're doing something different than the 12 guys who went in front of you. As far as gear goes, now punching heavy cover, put it on your punch rod, put it on your flipping stick, put it on your jig rod. But for the more traditional tube fishing, whether that be throwing a 4-inch tube with a standard head or throwing that little 2.5, I throw this stuff all on the same rods, okay? What you're looking for is that rod that's just a little bit stouter. And I also like a little bit longer. So I use, in the NRX Plus, I use the 872 spinning rod. That's my rod there. In St. Croix, you're talking 7.6 medium. Okay, a little bit longer, a little bit stouter. If you're going through your personal spinning rods trying to figure out, well, which one should I throw a tube on? You've probably got that one spinning rod that's just a little bit stouter than the other. So you pick up your drop shot rod and that thing will really flex. You pick up one of your other rods and it'll really flex. And then you pick up that one. Maybe it's what you use for a bigger Senko. Maybe it was that first spinning rod you picked up, that all-around spinning rod, and it's a little bit stouter than the rest. That's a tube rod. Okay, so let's say 7 foot to 7'6". I like a longer rod. I lean to that 7.3, 7.6 for this technique because I want to be able to really take up some line and hit them hard, because a lot of the time I'm using those heavier hooks. So I hit them as if I'm fishing a bait caster, you know, 8 or 10 pound line, and just smash that hook set. You guys have seen us smashing hook sets on the tube. That's no secret. But take that rod. When you fish that tube, you can slow drag them on bottom and kill it. Just pull and stop. Pull and stop. Pull and stop. If the water's really cold or the fish are really lethargic, that's what I'll do. If it's warmer, I mean, we are in summertime now, right? If it's warmer, or if there's current, they're used to everything moving, I'll work that tube a lot harder. You can actually crack a tube. You can full rod snap that tube and it'll take off and then sort of glide on its way back down. Because a tube, if you just throw it out in deep water, deep clear water, watch it, it'll go down in a big circle. We call it a death spiral. And those fish will just follow it down. So on a smaller scale, when you crack that thing up off the bottom, it'll jump up and then it'll kind of drift a little bit because it doesn't have time to make a full circle, but it'll start to drift and then hit the bottom again. Jump up and drift and hit the bottom again. and those fish will come after that. And then of course you can be somewhere in the middle. Treat it like a shaky head. Kind of work it a little bit, let it sit. Work it a little bit, give it a pop, let it sit. There's not a wrong way to fish a tube, but the warmer the water gets, the more aggressive you can get with it. The cooler the water, the more you just want to let that dead action take over and just slow fish that thing. Now, tube rods, they're available at every price point, right? NRX Plus, a high-end St. Croix, all the way down to some really good budget options. It just depends on how much you're going to use this technique, how much time you're going to put into it, and then what you have to spend. Because the more you're going to do the technique, you want a rod where you feel every bite, right? 20 or 30 foot deep, or a lethargic fish that just picks it up. Those higher end rods are way more sensitive and you'll feel those subtle pickups. But if this is a technique that you're just going to play with, you don't need to do that right out the gate, right? Take one of your rods, take the stoutest spinning rod that you've got, and use that until you decide whether or not you enjoy it. So I'll link you, in addition to all the baits, I'll link you from high end all the way down to budget, some of my favorite tube rods that have that right action where you can get good tip in the rod so you can work those baits effectively, but also enough backbone, one for hopping them aggressively and two for smashing those hook sets. Guys, don't overlook the tube this summer. It is hot outside. I'm sweating while I'm talking to you guys. It's hot. And this is a bait that works when it's hot. It works when it's freezing cold in the middle of winter, but it works just as well right now. And odds are on your lake, nobody else is doing it. So it's definitely worth picking up. That has saved, when I was guiding full time there on Clear Lake, the tube saved me on those tough days so many times. And I knew no one else on that whole lake had a tube tied on. But when I had to hit that panic button, when my plan wasn't working and we needed some fish in the boat, you pick up a 3.5 to 4 inch tube in a green pumpkin color, green pumpkin purple, a tilapia, which is basically a green pumpkin base, green pumpkin blue, anything like that, green pumpkin black flake. Put that guy on a mid-weight head like that. Just slow pull it, give it a little hop, slow pull it, fish in the boat. That worked for years, and it will work where you are too. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Tim and I appreciate you. We're so glad that we get to do this. If you get out there and you catch some fish doing this, let us know about it. We'd love to hear the positive feedback. Again, if you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.